A quiet truth most people never notice is this. The most dangerous thing about an empath is not their kindness. It is not their ability to forgive, and it is not even how much they care. It is what happens when that patience finally runs out. Because unlike others who react loudly, explain themselves, or try to be understood, an empath reaches a point where something inside them simply turns off. And when that moment comes, there is no warning, no final argument, no dramatic ending, just silence, distance, and a version of them you have never seen before. Because when an empath is truly done, they do not argue, they do not chase, they do not try to fix what is broken anymore. They disappear in a way that feels almost unreal. And by the time people realize what has happened, it is already too late to fix anything. And that is exactly what makes this stage so powerful and so misunderstood. Because from the outside it looks calm, controlled, even normal. But inside it is the result of a long emotional process that most people never take the time to understand. And in this video, you are going to discover the final stage of an empath's patience, the stage that nobody talks about, the stage that changes everything, and more importantly, why most people completely miss the signs until the connection is already gone. Because this is not about sudden decisions or random behavior. This is about a deep psychological shift that builds slowly over time, layer by layer, moment by moment, until there is nothing left to give. And once you understand this, you will start to see patterns that were invisible before. You will begin to recognize why some people walk away without explanation, and why their silence carries more meaning than words ever could. Because empaths feel deeply in a way that goes beyond surface emotions. They absorb energy. They notice small changes in tone, behavior, and attitude. And they process everything internally long before they ever say a word, which is why they often appear calm on the outside while dealing with intense emotional weight on the inside. They care more than most people. They listen more, they forgive more, and they give more chances than they should. Not because they are weak, but because they believe in understanding, they believe in connection, and they believe that people can change if given enough time and patience. And this is where the problem begins. Because while others may walk away early or set strict boundaries, an empath stays. They try, they adjust, they tolerate things that slowly drain them, all while hoping that things will get better. And this creates a dangerous imbalance, where one person keeps giving and the other keeps taking, often without even realizing the damage being done. And over time, this constant emotional effort starts to build pressure inside the empath, a kind of quiet exhaustion that does not show immediately, but grows stronger with every ignored feeling, every unspoken frustration, and every moment where their needs are pushed aside. And the truth is, most people never notice this stage, because empaths rarely complain. They do not create scenes. They do not demand attention. Instead, they adjust, they stay quiet, and they keep going, which makes it easy for others to assume that everything is fine. But beneath that calm surface, something important is changing, something that will eventually reach a breaking point. Because every empath has a limit. No matter how patient they are, no matter how understanding they try to be, there comes a moment where the emotional cost becomes too high, where the effort is no longer worth the outcome. And when that limit is crossed, the shift that happens is not loud or dramatic. It is silent, controlled, and final. And this is the part that most people never see coming, because they are too focused on the idea that the empath will always be there, always forgiving, always understanding, until one day they are not. And that absence feels confusing, sudden, and unexpected, even though it was building slowly the entire time. And in the next part of this video, you are going to learn how this process unfolds step by step, what signs appear before the final stage, and why ignoring those signs leads to a permanent disconnect that cannot be reversed. So make sure you stay until the end, because what you are about to hear is not just information. It is insight that can completely change how you see relationships, behavior, and emotional boundaries. And if you truly understand it, you will never look at silence the same way again. Welcome to the channel, where we break down human behavior in a way that is simple, real, and powerful. And if you want to see more content like this, that helps you understand people on a deeper level, make sure you subscribe and stay connected. It always begins in a way that looks harmless from the outside, a phase where nothing feels serious enough to walk away from, nothing feels big enough to confront. And so the empath stays quiet, watching, observing, and slowly adjusting themselves to keep the peace. Because in this first stage, silent tolerance becomes their default response. They notice the small changes in behavior, the little signs that something is off, the moments where respect feels slightly reduced or effort is no longer equal. But instead of reacting, they choose to understand. They tell themselves it is just a bad day, just stress, just a misunderstanding. And this is where red flags begin to lose their meaning. Not because they are invisible, but because the empath keeps giving them softer explanations, turning clear signals into temporary problems that will pass with time. And this pattern repeats again and again, where each moment that should create distance instead creates more patience, more forgiveness, more emotional investment. And slowly, without realizing it, they start absorbing the weight of everything. The tension, the negativity, the imbalance, all of it gets processed internally, while their external behavior remains calm and supportive. Because speaking up feels risky. It feels like it might hurt the other person. It might create conflict. It might damage the connection they are trying so hard to protect. So they choose silence over confrontation. And that silence becomes heavy over time, because it is not empty. It is filled with unspoken thoughts, ignored feelings, and emotional compromises that continue to build pressure inside them. And the deeper reason behind this is not weakness. It is the fear of causing pain, the deep need to maintain harmony, the belief that if they just stay patient a little longer, things will return to how they used to be. And this belief keeps them in a loop where they give more than they receive, where they adjust more than they should, and where their own needs slowly move to the background, becoming less important with every passing moment. And even when something clearly hurts them, they downplay it, they minimize it, they tell themselves it is not worth making an issue out of it, because keeping the connection intact feels more important than expressing discomfort. And this is how silent tolerance grows stronger, not as a single decision, but as a repeated pattern of choosing understanding over self-protection, until it becomes automatic, until it becomes who they are in that situation. And while everything appears stable on the surface, underneath it, something is already starting to shift, something that will not stay hidden forever. Because no matter how patient someone is, there is a limit to how much they can carry without being seen, without being heard. And this is where the second stage slowly begins to take shape, not as a sudden change, but as a gradual feeling that something is no longer right, something is no longer balanced. And that feeling grows stronger with time, turning into internal conflict, where the empath starts to feel drained in ways they cannot easily explain. Their energy feels lower, their emotions feel heavier, and the same situations that once felt manageable now feel exhausting. And this creates a kind of confusion that is difficult to ignore, a quiet question that keeps repeating in their mind. Why does it always feel like they are the one giving more? Why does it feel like their effort is not being matched? And even though they try to dismiss these thoughts, they keep coming back, stronger each time, because the imbalance has reached a point where it can no longer be ignored completely. And this is where emotional exhaustion begins to take hold, not in a dramatic way, but in small, consistent waves, where even simple interactions start to feel tiring, where their patience starts to feel forced instead of natural, and where their usual warmth begins to feel like effort instead of instinct. And at this stage, they begin to question everything, not just the other person, but themselves as well, wondering if they are expecting too much, if they are being too sensitive, if they are the problem. And this self-questioning adds another layer of pressure, because now they are not only dealing with external imbalance, but also internal doubt. And despite all of this, they still stay, they still try, they still hope that something will change, because leaving feels too extreme, too final. And so they continue holding on, even as something inside them starts to break quietly. And that breaking does not happen all at once. It happens slowly, piece by piece, as their emotional energy continues to drain until they reach a point where they can no longer respond the way they used to. And this is where the third stage begins, a stage that is often invisible to others, because it does not come with clear signs or loud reactions. It comes with subtle changes, small shifts in behavior that are easy to overlook but carry deep meaning. This is where emotional detachment starts to form, not as a decision but as a natural response to prolonged exhaustion. They begin to pull back, not physically at first, but emotionally. Their reactions become softer, less intense, less engaged. Things that once triggered strong feelings now barely create a response, and this change is not intentional. It is protective. It is the mind creating distance to reduce the constant strain. And from the outside, it may look like they are becoming calmer, more relaxed, less affected. But in reality, they are slowly disconnecting, reducing their emotional investment, because they no longer have the energy to keep giving at the same level. And this is the stage most people miss, because there is no confrontation, no clear signal that something is wrong, just a gradual fading of emotional presence, a quiet withdrawal that goes unnoticed until it becomes complete. And the important truth here is that detachment does not begin loudly. It does not announce itself. It starts silently, building over time, strengthening with every moment where their effort feels unappreciated, where their patience feels taken for granted. And as this detachment grows, it prepares them for the final stage, the stage where everything changes permanently, the stage where the breaking point is finally reached. And when that moment arrives, it does not come with anger. It does not come with dramatic expressions or emotional outbursts. It comes with stillness, a calm that feels almost unnatural. Because by this point, There is no emotional energy left to fight, no desire left to fix things, no motivation left to explain how they feel. And this is where the shift becomes undeniable. They stop trying, they stop investing, they stop caring in the way they used to. And the connection that once meant everything to them suddenly feels distant, almost irrelevant. And this is where their actions change in a way that cannot be reversed. They do not fight for the relationship anymore. They do not try to repair what is broken. They do not search for solutions or explanations, because in their mind, everything that could have been said has already been processed internally. Everything that could have been felt has already been felt, and what remains is emptiness, not because they never cared, but because they cared for too long without receiving the same in return. And this emptiness is often misunderstood, because people expect anger, they expect sadness, they expect some kind of emotional reaction that shows the connection still matters. But what they get instead is silence. And that silence carries a different kind of message, one that cannot be argued with, one that cannot be negotiated or reversed. Because silence means the emotional connection is already gone, and by the time this stage becomes visible, it is already over, not in a dramatic way, but in a final, irreversible way that leaves no room for repair. And this is what makes it so powerful, because it does not give warnings in the way people expect. It does not create a moment where things can be easily fixed. It simply ends, quietly, completely, and without looking back. And the deeper truth behind all of this is often overlooked, because people assume that leaving means giving up. But in reality, an empath does not leave when things get difficult. They do not leave at the first sign of conflict or discomfort. They stay longer than most. They try harder than most. They invest more than most. And by the time they finally decide to walk away, it is not a quick decision. It is the result of a long process where they have already given everything they had, where they have already tried every possible way to make things work, and where they have reached a point where staying no longer makes sense, because nothing is changing, nothing is improving, and nothing is worth the emotional cost anymore. And that is the moment where they let go, not out of anger, not out of resentment, but out of clarity. The kind of clarity that comes after exhaustion, after disappointment, after realizing that some connections cannot be saved, no matter how much effort is given. And that realization changes them, not just in that situation, but in how they approach everything moving forward. And in the end, the truth is simple, but most people realize it too late. Empaths don't lose people. People lose them, because an empath will stay through confusion, through silence, through pain that most would never tolerate. They will try to understand when others would walk away. They will give chances when others would close the door. But once that final stage is reached, once that quiet switch turns off inside them, there is no going back, not because they are cold, not because they stopped caring overnight, but because they cared for too long without being valued the same way. And when that realization becomes clear, they do not fight, they do not explain, they do not try to fix what has already been broken too many times. They simply step away with a calm that feels final. And that is why patience should never be tested. Because patience is not endless. Even in the most understanding person, there is always a limit. And crossing that limit does not create noise. It creates distance. It creates silence. It creates an ending that does not come with warnings. Because the loudest emotions were already felt long before the goodbye ever happened. And the final truth is this: the quietest goodbye is always the one that lasts forever. Because it is not built on impulse. It is built on realization, on clarity, on the deep understanding that nothing will change no matter how much effort is given. And once someone reaches that point, there is nothing left to hold on to. So if this made you see something differently, if this made you understand a pattern you ignored before, do not brush it aside. Because awareness is what changes everything. And if you want more content that helps you understand people, behavior, and the hidden truths behind emotions, take a second to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share it with someone who needs to hear this. Because sometimes the right message at the right time can change everything.